right? Especially when they're away from home. Finally, they reported prior delinquent behavior. Well, folks, there's your risk factors. Personality, attitudes, associates, history, and family. What didn't predict? You remember those coaches in that other study? They said to us it was those poor kids. Kids from the ghetto. Guess what? We didn't find it. Coming from an impoverished background, having a lack of money while in college, do not appear to be major sources of rule infraction. How many of you had a lot of money when you went to school? And here's what those coaches were really saying to us. What they were really saying was, it's these poor black kids we recruit out of these bad neighborhoods with no support. Guess what? Our sample was 50% black and 50% white. Race was not a predictor. Why would we think it would be? What's a predictor is your attitude, your values, who you hang around with, your friends. Those are the things that are important. Organizational context. They said some places cheat more than others. Some regions of the country, some schools, some coaches, what they call the bad apple theory. Just a couple renegade coaches. All right? We didn't find it. I'm a Buckeye. I went to Ohio State. When I did this study, Michigan had beaten us 5 years straight. I'd have turned their asses in if I saw they were cheating. It did not matter, by the way. There was no one immune to it. And finally, here's an important one for you. The threats of sanctions, the certainty and severity of punishment for violating the rules was not related to infractions. You couldn't scare them or threaten them out of their behavior. Oh, you could scare or threaten the low-risk kids. But guess what? They weren't the cheaters. The high-risk kids, you weren't going to threaten them out of their behavior. Not when you have those attitudes and values and all that reinforcement from your friends. So, the next lesson I've learned, lesson number 4, doing things well makes a difference. This is called fidelity principle. And I think it's probably true in just about anything we do in life. Right? If you're not going to do it well, you're probably not going to get what you expect. Okay? We've seen this. Whoa. We see this even with evidence-based programs. This is out of Washington State. Functional family therapy. Effect sizes, almost 40% reductions in recidivism, but only if it's delivered competently. Aggression replacement therapy. 25% effect size, only when it's delivered competently. We just did a study in Ohio looking at residential programming, and we found that for some groups, not doing the group poorly was better than not doing it. Doing it for the group poorly was worse than not doing it at all. It was only when the groups were run with fidelity that we saw treatment effects. So, you don't have mechanisms to monitor your delivery of services. I get into this a lot. This is what I do. And a lot of folks, I always get folks to say to me, well, we do a lot of individual sessions in counseling, right? And what do you think of that? And I'll say, well, here's the problem. How do you know what's going on in that session? How do you know what they're talking about? They could be talking about football, right? I mean, it's a hard thing to do quality on. Now you can, but most folks don't. They just assume who's ever doing it knows what they're doing and is doing the right thing. All right? So I'm just throwing this out because you need to think about that. In 3 of the big, large studies I've done have found a strong relationship between program integrity and recidivism. The higher the score, the greater the reductions in recidivism. In the studies I've done here in Virginia, when we've come in and looked at your programs in various counties, we just finished Richmond. What we've done is we've assessed the programs. And we said, here's where you're doing well, here's where you're not doing, and what are we looking at? We're looking at the staff, we're looking at assessment, we're looking at the treatment, we're looking at how it's delivered. That's what we're measuring. When I talk about program integrity, there's no secret to it. I'm looking at the quality of what you're doing. Why? Well, because residential programs, poor quality, high quality. That's a 40% swing in recidivism between the best and the worst. And the worst are increasing it by 20%. Community supervision programs, the worst, the best. That's a 30% swing in recidivism. In one juvenile study, we broke it down by risk level because, right, you have to deal with low-risk kids. They come into the system. You've got to design something for them. Well, guess what? At every risk level, the high-quality programs here are the recidivism rates are in white. The poor quality are in orange. At every risk level, higher quality programs, big effects in recidivism. The last lesson that I've learned is you can change behavior, but you got to go about it the right way. And let me start by saying right out the bat, it's not easy to change behavior. If you think it is, try changing your own. And we know how hard that is. It's hard to lose weight. It's hard to get in shape. Hard to give up a bad habit. Right? And so it's not an easy thing to do. I want people to recognize that. We spend all our time kind of, can't figure out why these kids won't change, these families won't change. It's not easy. I learned this lesson from these four. These are my children. And they're grown up now, but I learned it starting with this one. Allison is the youngest. And when she was younger, she, like most of the younger children, she kind of got picked on a little bit, and she had a temper on her. She wasn't going to put up with any growth, especially from this one, okay? Because he was the next in age to her, and he knew how to get her going. So one day, when she was young, probably about this age or so, she got mad at him, and she threw the portable phone and bounced it off his head and was standing over him, telling him what else she was going to do to him. Okay? And I caught her. And what did I do? I said, Allison, how many times have I told you you're not to hurt your brother? She said, I don't know. I thought you were keeping track. Get in the corner, right? Now, why am I putting her in the corner? I'm putting her in the corner to punish her. The purpose of punishment, of that punisher, by the way, is to extinguish the behavior. That's why we want to punish people, right? We don't want them to do it again, right? So we're punishing her. I put her in the corner. Now, the first question I have to ask is, how long do I put her in the corner? Well, child psychologists tell us a minute for every year. So she was 6, I put her in for 6 minutes. I did forget her once. I was watching television. But you laugh. I've seen programs where they put them in chairs or isolation, and they keep doubling it if they act up. And I think, we think that's terrible, but we do it all the time. I said, a week to detention, you screw up, I'll give you 2 weeks, right? I mean, we double it all the time. So I put her in the corner, I set the timer, right? And I said, you think about what you did. Now she looks at me, she looks at her brother, and I know she's thinking, when I'm done with him, I'm coming after you. All right? That's what she's thinking. She's mad. About 2 minutes in, she calmed down. Big lip comes out. She starts feeling sorry for herself. She says, wish I was dead, that would fix you. Starts pouting, right? I said, put that nose back in the corner. About minute 5, she says to me, Dad, I'm ready to get out of the corner. I'm sorry. I said, Allison, think about what you did, and when the timer goes off, we'll talk. Timer goes off. She comes out of the corner. Now, I've extinguished the behavior. The punisher has worked. She's calm. She's reasonable. She's telling me she's sorry for her behavior. She probably would have told me she wasn't going to do it again if I asked her, right? But I don't believe that. So I bring her out, and I looked at her, and I said, Allison, tell me what you did. And she said, Michael did this. I said, that's criminal thinking. Right? And she wants to blame the victim.